Hitman 2-3, this is Hitman 2. What's the status? Over. 2-3, stand by. Goliath, this is 2 Bravo. Request permission to engage enemy paratroopers and attempt to snatch a grid Papa uniform 259er, 119er. Break.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. You're with Ben Powers of the Commander's Voice. My guest today is Ms. Jil Launay. She is a founding member of the Liberty Jump Team here in Texas. She's also a member of the, was it the Northwest chapter of the 82nd
North,
North
Texas.
The North Texas chapter of the 82nd Airborne Association. And she is the daughter of a paratrooper who jumped into D-Day with the 507th Parachute Infantry Regiment. So, Ms. Jill, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So it's really exciting to have you here today. So the first question I've got, ma'am, and there's so much to talk about in that resume here, but what motivated you to get involved with establishing the Liberty Jump Team, and what is the team's mission?
Okay. Well, actually, just to go back a little bit, growing up as an Army brat, for some reason, I was always interested in my father's history. He had a huge scrapbook that he started in 1939 and continued it through his whole career into the late 60s. And I would just sit there and pour through it and pour through his yearbooks from every regiment that he was ever in. Just got real interested. My dad began going back to Normandy for the 40th reunion of D-Day. And finally, in 2001, he asked me to go. So he'd already taken one of my other brothers and sisters, and so he asked my other sister and I to go with him on that particular trip. It was amazing. I mean, it was amazing. But I also, at one point, met my husband there, and we married a year later. He was a French paratrooper, can't talk, and he had always dreamed of giving back to the World War II vets as a French kid, because his parents had started bringing him to Normandy from the time he was like 10 years old on, teaching him the history of the World War II vets. And as he grew older and went into his own military service, he met more and more. So this was a huge desire of his, but he didn't think it would be possible because he was out of the military and, oh gosh, you can't go do civilian jumps in France. I said, well, you know, I've never been one to take no for an answer very good. And I said, where there's a will, there's a way. In short, he did jump for the 60th. And in 2005, the mayor of Carrington, where there had never been a parachute jump before, everything was pretty much centered around St. Mary Glees. He was a good friend of my husband's, and he came to him and asked him, would he find some guys to come do a jump in his town? So we just kind of put the word out to a few friends of ours and in the military community, and we put this jump together for 2006, and the mayor called it the Liberty Jump. So we made baseball caps and we made shirts, and we all looked really good. We actually ended up having quite the amazing week. We not only did the jump in Carrington, which was attended by over 7,000 people, several people from the embassy who we had good connections with, several top generals, and several, of course, the best of all, many World War II veterans. We also managed to do a jump in Offreville, which was the 507th drop zone, designated drop zone for World War II. So all in all, that went amazing. We thought, okay, this was great fun. We enjoyed this, you know, move on. A few weeks after the jump, we started getting calls from the guys who'd gone over with us saying, what now? And we said, well, this was a one-time deal. And they said, why? So we began thinking about it, and we sat down with our, there were four of us that actually started the team, Dom and I, the gentleman who is now our Chief of Veteran Affairs, Peter Plank, and one of our jump masters who'd been Special Forces guy, Roger Wolf. So we had a little meeting at our house in September and formed our 501c3. And there it began, September 19th, 2006.
That's very cool.
And,
that's really exciting.
And just grown since then.
And you had just mentioned before we started the actual interview, ma'am. So you're actually also a certified drop zone safety officer as part of your.
Yes, I am. I am. I'm very fortunate in that my father's ties with the 507 were so strong. He went to reunions there every year. He would go to the Airborne Awards every year in Atlanta. And I started going to these with him. And after we formed the team, we started getting a lot of attention from active duty 507 who were very interested in jumping a C-47 and jumping with us. So in 2009, I had been, well, just to back up, our very first jump before we formed the team, one of my friends from the 81st Readiness Command came to me and said, who's going to run your drop zone for the jump? We want to make sure this goes well for you guys. And I said, well, I'm learning from this guy from Belgium over here, you know, who'd been in the military, but, you know, we had kind of just doing the best we can right now. And they said, well, that's not good enough. You know, we need this to go well for you. So they came, stripped off any identifying, you know, sanitizer uniforms completely. Came out to our DZ, about 6 of them. And a gentleman, Chief Warrant Officer Mike Rich, who I'd met back in 2001, said, I'm going to teach you how to be a drop zone safety officer. And I said, okay. And this particular team is also, or crew, are the ones who actually had been running the jump at Lafier, the Combined Forces military drop at Lafier, for years and years and years. And he said, and so then began my education. Every time we would do a jump in 2006, 2007, Mike came, worked with me. But then not only that, I had met the battalion commander, 1st 507th battalion commander. And he said, why don't you come down to Benning and spend some time on the drop zone with our Pathfinders when we're running school jumps? You know, this might be real beneficial to you. Well, the Pathfinders were great. They took me under their wing, taught me more than I would ever need to know. And we had a gentleman on the team at the time who was one of the black hats. He actually was what we called the Tower Branch Rat. He lived in the office at the base of the Tower Branch, was his, I say lived in it, practically did. He had his office in there. And he joined our team and became one of our jump masters. He came to me at one point and said, we need to get you certified. We need to get you some good credibility here, other than you just learning what, you know your stuff. Let's do this. So he set up a course for our team. 11 jumpers besides myself took it, and I was the only one that scored 100% on the, so they're like, boop, you're it. So ever since then, I've been running our drop zone, which I absolutely love to do. Never thought it would be something I'd be doing as a grandmother, but I had great guys. I've got great ground crew. I run a very tight DZ, and yeah, it's something I really, really enjoy.
I was looking through the Liberty Jump Team Facebook page when you guys were in Normandy doing the 75th anniversary jumps, and some of my favorite photos of you running the DZ ST with the guys from, they obviously looks like combat controllers, maybe some Pathfinders, but it's all these stereotypical looking macho dudes, and then you with your shock of blonde hair. Those are the fantastic photographs.
Well, what's happened over the years is Dominique being French, and through his connections and us having a second home in Normandy, he's gotten to know a lot of on the French side as well as the U.S. side. In 2009, Chief Rich went before went to the first IPR for the jumps that year for the Combined Forces military drop. And they said, we want to put forth, he and Lieutenant Colonel David McNeil, who both of them, David McNeil is actually one of our team members. But Colonel McNeil had been the driving force on the Army side for years and years with Colonel Nightingale for forming these jumps and the military coming over there to jump. So a good man to have in our corner. Sometimes he was the silent voice. And then finally in 2009, he and Chief Rich both said, we would like to see Liberty Jump Team be able to drop before the military at Lapeer. It never happened before except in 2001, and that was almost a disaster at that jump. And at first they said, well, no, we should have them jump after us. And they said, no, they'll be jumping, 25 to 30 jumpers, and we're jumping 600. I think our, their ratio of have someone carted off the drop zone is a lot lower than ours would be. So anyway, starting in 2009, we earned that right to be able to be the lead-in for the Combined Forces military drop. Well, along with that I still needed to run a drop zone, set up a DZ. So Chief Rich would send me over to where the military was setting up and saying, you're going to set up just over here, just off to the side of them. So I did that till about 2012. And it was interesting in 2012 because it was the first year that the Air Force came in and set up the drop zone as opposed to KPOC out of Bragg or the 81st. And our drop went very, very well, but as we were leaving the drop zone, the winds started kicking. And the Air Force had actually moved the PI way up by the Mater River. Well, no matter how many times you tell troopers that those panels and that ram are not a target, they're all going to try to get as close off of it as they can. Well, this resulted in several going into the river by them moving this. And about halfway through or towards their second loads coming, or their second lifts coming, as we're leaving the DZ from the point where we had always set up according to the military survey, we see them moving everything back drop zone to where we've just vacated and saying, maybe we should have done this. So anyway, that's brought me into a really great partnership with the military. Ever since then, starting in 2013, I earned my place to actually go with them to the DZ in the morning. All of us, we set up, whether we use all of the military equipment that's already set up out there, which is great for me, not having to cart all my gear out there. And I'm out there with them till 4:30 in the afternoon till we clear the military. 3 years ago, I actually was named the civilian DZSO for any civilian group jumping at Lapeer, because there is now another group that also jumps there as well as us. And I'm formed a great relationship with the G3 Air guys for out of Bragg. And, we've done Holland together. We've done this now together, and we picked up several team members from a lot of these guys. But yeah, I now have my place out there with them from 8:30 in the morning till 4:30 in the afternoon. And I do love it. I do love it. And my husband has become, because you have to have an air boss in France for jumps. Several years ago, they named my husband as the civilian air boss.
Oh, very cool.
So unfortunately, what it does is it keeps him from jumping at Lapeer, because he has to be up in the command tent. Can't even see the drop from where they are with all of the authorities, but he can do our other jumps. We just always put him out first so he can get to the ground and go ahead and do his duties. But it works. It works.
Oh, that's fantastic. And what a great legacy for your dad, too. Could you tell the folks listening and watching a little bit more about your father's D-Day experience?
Oh my gosh. Dad was actually a major, 29 years old when he dropped into Normandy. He was the jump master on his load. He had approximately 100 to 102 jumps before he ever jumped in Normandy. Because the guys from early on, from the 501st Parachute Battalion, which is where he was first, and he was actually, you had your first 14 or so that formed the test platoon, but then that evolved into 48, pretty much one from every state. And my father was asked by Colonel Miley at Fort Benning to come and show up to sign up for the paratroopers. We're starting something new. We're going to sign up. And about 200 guys showed up over there. And my dad very patiently stands in line until Miley gets up from the head table where they're signing guys up. And he walks down, he goes, Smitty, what are you doing here? And he says, well, you told me to be here to sign up for the paratrooper. I said, you're already in. So he became our master trainer and then the supply officer at Benning. So on that night, he was the jump master of his load. He said they came in about 300 feet, 300 to 350 AGL. And he said, where I knew that other jump masters led the way and went out of the plane first, I want to make sure my guys were out first. So he emptied his load and then he went out. Well, by that time, he had lost, you know, a lot of distance between DZT and Omfreville and Freyville, where he ultimately ended up jumping out near the train station there. So he did meet up with a couple other 507s. I believe he met up with a couple of 505. I mean, it was a group of 7 of them, but he was the only officer in the group. So they headed towards, you know, Lafier and Gorbersville, that area in Omfreville. And they were going up through an apple orchard just outside of Freyville when a sniper opened fire, and he caught a bullet going in on his right side in the back, coming out and lodging, going into his right wrist, where he was holding his pistol, and it shattered his wrist.
Oh my goodness. And
so he told them, he said, get out of here, leave me. They'll take me, I'm an officer. You guys got to go. Well, one private stayed behind to aid him. And he ended up like leaving as soon as they realized the Germans were like almost, and Dad told him, get out of here. You've done what you can. So the Germans picked him up and they took him to Gorbersville in a horse-drawn cart that they had one of the farmers bring out to load him in. Took him over to Gorbersville, and there was a little small aid station right there in Gorbersville. The German doctor who did surgery on him spoke beautiful English. He had actually spent some time in the United States. And I think there were 3 of them there at the time when Dad has surgery. There were 2 other soldiers and himself. So he wakes up from his surgery, and there is a German soldier sitting in a chair across from him, rifle between his legs, you know, like this. And the doctor walks in and said, this soldier has brought you red wine and cigarettes and gruel, or oatmeal, I guess. You can have can't have the cigarettes, but you can have the gruel and he said, no, by the way, this is the guy who shot you.
Oh my goodness.
Well, my dad being my dad, they shared that bottle of wine, he and this soldier. And it turned out that he was a white Russian who had been conscripted into the German army. And so he was there till they moved my dad down to Rennes. And one of my dad's biggest regrets was never finding out his name.
Oh, wow.
Because he said, I would have liked to, he said they had great conversation. Obviously, this was a soldier who did not want to be where he was in the German army. And he said, I would have loved to have thanked him years later for that small kindness that he showed. They moved him from there to Rennes, to a big hospital down there, to Chartres, and then ultimately to Oflag 64 in Poland.
And is that where your dad spent the rest of the war?
Nope. He, as the Americans were advancing, they decided to move the prisoners, especially because this camp was primarily made up of officers, and to move them to Berlin. And there's actually an article about my dad called First into Berlin ? And he, when they sent him to Berlin, they sent them, well, when they arrived there, they were kind of, I want to say, under the authority of a German sergeant who had been at the prison camp with them named Bull. And, there were no POW camps in Berlin to speak of. So it was like what to do with them. So he took them to his aunt's house. And there, I believe, 6 of them that he was in charge of. His aunt loved Americans. She had been a swimmer and almost an Olympic contender. So she had actually come to the United States in the early 30s, late 20s and competed.
Oh, wow.
So she loved having all these American soldiers in her home, but there was not enough room there for all of them. So my dad and 2 others got moved to his uncle's house, who was not a friend at all of the Americans. And in fact, he would have German officers to the house for dinner all the time. So here they were in this house, and here are German officers coming in and having dinner there, until the night the Reichstag was hit. And when that happened, everything got chaotic, but they ultimately made their way actually to the Russians, and then were returned to the U.S.
Oh, that's an amazing story.
So he was actually a POW from the late night of June 6th, because he was shot in the afternoon of June 6th, early evening of June 6th, to May 1945.
Amazing. And what was your dad's name?
Gordon Kenneth Smith. He retired as a lieutenant colonel. He was, like I said, he was a major during D-Day.
No, that's absolutely amazing. When you got to go back to Normandy for the first time, could he identify anywhere close to where he had landed?
Oh yeah, absolutely. He knew right where. I mean, he took us right over there. He had already been visited there before we ever came. But something that was very nice that happened was my husband actually found the family whose father had produced the horse-drawn cart to take him to the aid station. And we met his daughter, and were able to take a photograph of my father and her together.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful. That must be a wonderful family artifact.
Yeah. The people of Normandy are so great about helping aid these soldiers in finding out where they were, or, where they ended up, or what families they met. We've seen a lot of reuniting of these families with veterans going over there over the years, and it's incredible.
That's very cool. Now, running out of time here, man, but I did want to ask you about how the current environment with the pandemic and things like that are affecting Liberty Jump Team's operations. Because I know that you guys do commemorative operations in Normandy and in Holland, and you jump around at air shows. So what does the future hold, or is it just too early to tell?
I think it's too early to tell. Right now, we are slated to go to Holland in September. There's just a few of us that are planning to go. Now, the issue may be, if we go, coming back home and not having to be in quarantine for 14 days, because they've opened up over there. I just had a email from one of our members in Holland, and he said, we're getting a sense of normalcy here. We're getting back to normal. And kids were in school starting in May, and but it's been tough, and it's been disheartening watching. You saw my last email about having to cancel Fort Benning, and Fort Benning is very near and dear to all of us because we do 2 jumps there a year at least. And we've just seen one thing canceled after another, and the beginning was the cancellation of our, not only our jump school, but our trip to Normandy, which is a lot of work to put together, and to have to cancel the whole thing was just really one of the toughest emails I've had to send out to the team in a long time. So we'll see. I mean, I'm just trying to have a lot of faith that life will get back to normal again. And I'm not sure what that normal is going to look like, but I suspect we're going to get to a place where we're going to be back full swing, and we're planning for Normandy 2021 already. So we already have all of our invitations from all the mayors over there for our drops, and we're just ready to go. Be ready to go again.
Very cool. So if folks want to find out more about Liberty Jump Team, they can just Google Liberty Jump Team or get on Facebook and do a search, and you guys will come right up.
Oh yeah, just go to libertyjumpteam.com, and if you follow the link, if you've never jumped before, or if you're a refresher, former military jumper, you'll see all the information for our basic and our refresher course. If you're an active duty soldier who is currently on jump status, you just send your application in to us. Everyone on the team does own all of their own equipment, and in some areas that's getting harder to find, but we do have good resources for it. But yeah, the email that you would send or the phone number you would call would link directly to me for a membership. So.
Good deal. Well, thank you for sharing that, ma'am. So once again, this has been Powers with the Commander's Voice. My guest today has been Jil Launay, Vice President of Liberty Jump Team, Drop Zone Safety Officer Extraordinaire, and this has been a fantastic interview. So thank you so much for sharing your time with us, ma'am.
Thank you, Ben, and look forward to finally meeting in person.
Yes, ma'am. You have a wonderful 4th of July weekend, and we'll talk soon.
You too. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.